All right. Hmm. Hmm.
Is it something on my end?
Ah, no, it's not on your end. We got it. We're on. Hello,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen. Um, we're just going to be cutting and pasting, you guys. You know this. You know the scoop. Sounds great, Ron.
Sounds amazing.
Yeah, man. That's really cool. You sound great. Hey, ladies and gentlemen. Um, I'm together, but here. Okay, and I'm just getting my stuff in order here, Ron. Ron is today. Um, and I'm just getting my stuff together. Here we go. Yep, I'm all set up. Okay. Okay, Ron. Isn't it amazing? First of all, I just want to say that you can live in the same town and not cross paths a lot for years,
It's true.
like you and I.
Yeah, I mean, we first met in Costa Mesa, which
Yeah,
I was where I am now. But I don't know if you lived down here or if you were just down for a concert.
yeah.
Hmm.
You're not talking about the recent one, are
I'm
you?
talking about a non-recent, actually, at Orange Coast College. You came and did something with Doc's band there quite a while back.
Yeah,
And I think that's the first time I heard you and met you.
that was a great band. That was well known in Orange County, but that should have been known everywhere. That was an amazing band, great writing, great playing.
For sure.
Yeah,
Well, a lot of great alumni came out of that program.
yeah.
Right?
Like,
Eric Marienthal um, comes to mind.
yeah, Eric Marion. Yeah, those were the those were the days of Eric Marienthal as a young player.
I was there when Eric was still in high school, and I was just out of high school in the 70s. And then I didn't really pursue jazz for a long time, but I was in there and took a little improv and a little big band and soaked it up and loved it, but went a different direction. Headed over to the electronic music lab on the other side of campus, which was a little closet with a Moog modular synthesizer, a lot of knobs.
Those were the days. That's great. Yeah.
So, and then it was time to transfer to a huge one with many more knobs. So I ended up going there to finish, and then I stayed there for my master's. And I remember asking my committee if I could do my master's thesis as an electronic piece, and said, no, 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 no. You need to write for instruments. We know you can twiddle. You can now I really don't
Sorry,
like twiddling
sorry,
knobs all that more.
you're cutting out slightly. So if I
Am I
look,
cutting out?
yeah, if I look
Shall I
dazed,
go
that's
original
why.
sound on?
Okay, if you want, I I have mine off because of something that
Is
I
that
was.
better?
Oh yeah, well I can hear you for sure.
Oh, there's a little delay. Okay. Yeah, thanks for the feedback on that. If there's any issues, I'll try and fix them.
Okay, cool.
So we're okay for now, though? You can hear me?
I think so. Yeah,
Can you
your
hear me
voice
now?
sounds higher.
Higher.
So, um, so they, so you'd been working, it sounds like for several years in the electronic
Well, I was
area.
just interested in it. Working wasn't a word that was in my vocabulary for until much later. I was just going to
You were
school,
studying though
studying.
for
Yeah, I
a
was,
few
yeah.
years or something, right? I mean,
Well, yeah. I went to UCLA, the big history emphasis there, and just learning all the aspects of music, and taking piano lessons from there and all that.
yeah.
Um, but actually, that's where I got interested in dance and dance accompaniment, and I wanted to go to the dance department, which was very vibrant department, and ended up accompanying. And then when I finally got my master's degree and still didn't have a job, as I said, I wasn't really thinking about working yet.
Yeah.
I saw a flyer for a dance accompanist position opened at Idlewild School of Music and the Arts, and I called and went up and auditioned and got it, and spent the next 5 years doing that,
Oh, okay.
learning
I
on the
taught up
job.
there,
Oh,
so I have a bit of reality on that. I taught for a year. So, but much later probably. But it's such a cool environment. That's really nice that you did that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was a breath of fresh air after living in
Lit-
LA for 10
Literally.
years, right?
Yeah. Did you move up there or?
Oh yeah, I lived up
Oh,
there full time and hardly came back to the city that whole
oh.
time. I just, was happy to be in the woods.
Were you, was Paul Carmen there at that time?
No, not yet. I think that was before. I was there from 89, so excuse me, 88 to 93.
Okay.
And yeah, Marshall Hawkins was there though, and that's where we met. And he was very
Yeah.
encouraging to me always. And but I still wasn't really interested in jazz. I mean, I wasn't actively interested in jazz. My interest in jazz goes back to when I was 14, and my stepfather had the was it KKGO in those days.
Yeah, I think so. Well, I don't know because I'm from Boston, but I did come out in 75
No,
and I believe KKGO was happening then. Yeah.
anyway, that's where was first exposed to it, and I immediately dug it and
Yeah.
started studying it. But yeah, I bought the books, and listened a little bit. But it really wasn't until the end of my dance accompaniment career that I really decided I wanted to learn jazz. And I actually came back to Orange County, and Doc was still there, and I got in back into the program and really buckled down, and then got a gig, and that's when I really learned what you have to learn to work. I was on the gig, so
Now, was Luther Hughes involved at this point?
I had not met. Yeah, so that's when I met Luther. Was actually Doc brought him in to the improv class to teach, just to come in, and I'll never forget it because I mean I know Luther now; he's a good friend, but at the time it just scared the heck out of me. It was like a tag turnaround, and on the tag turnaround, you go to the three with a flat five, right? And that's what really everyone here knows we're doing a tag now. We're not, it's the signal kind of that note, and but that note wasn't played. Somebody did not play the flat five. They played a regular five, and Luther just like, no, you know how he does. And I, like I said, it scared me to death. But then, yeah, I was going to the Kikuya restaurant in Huntington Beach a lot
Oh
then, just
yeah.
to really listen, and learn. And Luther was playing there a lot. And then eventually we became friends. Much later, yeah.
Stephanie Haynes was around then too, right?
Yes, she was. Yes, she was.
See that
In fact,
picture?
her. Yeah. Oh, wow.
That's me and her in um had to be the 80s, I guess.
Oh. Yeah,
Yeah.
Bopsicle came in and played for the improv class too, and that was like,
Oh.
so awesome. And I ended up working with Jack Prather a fair amount later, but that was
Hmm.
all just really new to my ears. Even after getting a master's degree and being involved in music since I was a little kid, these sounds were kind of new to me, and yeah, wonderful stuff. I still have my Bopsicle cassette. And actually, Stephanie came in. I One of my very first gigs was a little Italian restaurant in Long Beach called Gazella, and I wandered in and I asked them if they'd like some solo piano, and they said yes. That's like the only time I ever went and asked for a gig, and they said yes. So it didn't last that long, but well, it didn't last that long because I was working with singers a lot, and all these singers were like, "Oh, you have a gig? Can we sit in?" And so that they were like, "We thought this was a solo piano." So, but anyway, Stephanie did the gig one night. I got to work with her one time. That was
Hmm.
great. I was still so green. I knew nothing. I knew nothing. But I don't know that much more now.
Well, that's an interesting beginning. I mean, and reflecting back on that stuff is kind of it's sobering in a way. It's like, wow, I've really I really went through these periods and and would you say jazz became important in your playing or is it still kind of is it a backseat or is it a balance with you do classical and you're composing too, right?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely not a back seat. And yes, very important. Uh, I'll just step back a little. And my first wake up call about learning tunes was I was in Idlewild and I got a call from the UCLA music department. I was on their list of people, if people needed a musician, they'd call the music department. If you were on their list, they might call you an alumnus, you know. So they called me to play for a private party. And I knew they were going to want Jerome Kern. It was June Allison, and of course she performed Jerome Kern. You know, I think she might have premiered one of the standards that we know. So my mom helped out and said, "Get this book," and got me all these books. So I'm at the gig, and I've got all of these books, and I don't know any of the songs. I'm reading, and then also I couldn't even get through one tune from beginning to end by memory, and
Yeah.
something clicked in me that's like, dude, you're a composer. You have a master's degree. You can't even play a whole 32 bar song. Something's wrong here. So I knew I needed to change and learn since. And then, of course, Doc's program was ideal for that because you go in there and, well, you get the real book, but really he's like, okay, now play this key. And now, you know, you had to know the tune. So that was his whole emphasis. Um, so that was I wanted to just mention that little beginning of that.
Yeah.
But as
Yeah.
far as now, jazz is kind of integral to my thinking because it's really it's composition, right?
Yeah.
Live. And
Yeah. Yeah.
also it's anyway, it's I just love it. But you know, I can float into it or I can go into classical. I'm not really a classical pianist, concert pianist, you know, I just don't practice enough to do
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I'll get hired sometimes to accompany recitals, and then I'll put everything aside and really work hard to for those. But it takes me a long time to really get a piece of music as a classical piece, which everything can be choreographed. It takes me a long time to get it really in my hands, too long, and I have other interests. So I didn't, you know, I decided a long time ago not to focus on just one thing. So I kind of bounce around.
Yeah. Well, that, I mean, that experience that you just talked about at the party, that was a long time ago, right?
Yeah, this was very early 90s, maybe 1990,
Yeah.
91.
Yeah.
So I still
And
wasn't ever working in you know, I had never done a jazz gig, put it that
yeah,
way.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, so now, you can tell we don't know each other because I'm asking you all these questions. Um, so are you, I mean, now is a little weird because, after the pandemic and blah, 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 the gigs kind of slowed down, or maybe our, like our feelings of going out, knocking on, a restaurant door and saying, do you want solo piano? It's kind of for some reason not as prominent, right? I always think about that. I'm like, why don't I just, do what I used to do? Just go to a restaurant and say, do you want, I'd love to have a steady gig with a piano and me, you know,
Mhm.
but I'm not so inclined anymore to go out there and knock on doors. Anyway, what I wanted to say or ask was, so over the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, have you played a lot with bands in jazz venues, that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, so here's my current work
yeah.
life. I have a steady church gig, which is jazz oriented.
That's cool.
It's a Saturday afternoon or, well, 5 o'clock. So, service that the pastor also plays saxophone.
Uh,
And so we'll usually do a couple of, jazz tunes as people are coming in. And then in the course of the thing, there might be some things with the jazz or a pop flavor, which is nice. So, but what's really nice is steady gig
yeah.
and a good piano. And then once a month, uh, we head out after the service to a local pub and we really play and for so people can socialize and have a little kind of afterglow
Cool.
thing. And right now John Ferraro's is a drummer on that, and Ernie Nunez is actually the regular bass player on that service
Wow,
every
Ernie
month.
Nunez. I haven't heard his name for a long time.
And so I've been doing that now for about 8 years, and um,
Wow.
So, a steady gig, I know. And it's a wonderful, I mean, it's very nurturing. The people are all wonderful. And, I feel very fortunate. Let's just say that. I also met my wife there. So that was a little
Oh,
bonus.
wow, that's cool.
I had a steady church gig that was on Sunday mornings. So they two overlapped for a long time, which ended about a year ago, but it went for almost 30 years.
Oh my God.
And the
Wow.
band went through ins and outs, and Benjamin May was the bass player on that for a while, and Wayne, I don't know if you know Wayne, great
Yeah,
rhythm player,
yeah.
was on that for a while, and actually my first jazz CD,
Oh
Rumbango,
yeah.
it's a little glossy
From
there with the
Brandon.
surround. Both those people are on it, and also Andrea Carroll, great drummer, who lives here in Orange County, and so I made a CD because they were, had a good working relationship from every Sunday, and so the steady, and I do some things with a synagogue, so I got all my bases covered. I've got the Center of Spiritual Living, and I got Presbyterian, and I've got Jewish Temple. So I figure one of the gods is gonna be let me in the door.
At least one. But what if you have at least two that want
Oh,
you?
then well, they'll have to just fight over me. But that was another really, really fortunate gig because it wasn't an organ hymns. This was at Centers for Spiritual Living in
Yeah.
Costa Mesa, and the pastor again was a musician. He was a drummer, and brought in guest artists every week, different singers, a lot of whom I know you know. Um, Cat Adams, Janelle Sadler, all. Well, I don't know if Janelle did that. Janelle did the Ritz Carlton gig.
Oh,
But anyway, so I got to work with a lot of really great musicians. Barbara Morrison performed there a couple times,
oh wow.
and so that was a really good for me as a very like just novice starting late and this path thing to be able to work with all these great people and learn from them. So while earning a living, and then I teach private piano lessons and do other things too. But I've played mostly jazz since that June Allison private party where I had to have books all over the piano
Which was a long time ago.
a long time ago.
Um, didn't I read that your composition life is kind of busy?
Right, so there you go. All of that stuff I would like to retire tomorrow so I can just devote my time to composing.
Yeah,
I'm
really?
only half joking, because then I would be
Yeah,
like, oh man, I want to go play music with my friends.
yeah, yeah.
But on the other hand, every time I have some free time, I get to work on one of my composition projects because it's really important to me and I love doing it. And always wherever I was, I would look for opportunities. So when I was in Idlewild, I wrote three orchestra pieces that were performed by the orchestra up there, and did a couple of other things. A set of three alto songs for a classical alto singer and cello and clarinet piano, which was really fun. T.S.
Oh,
Eliot, Thomas Hardy, and then an unknown writer that I found in an anthology named Matthews. I think it was Esther Matthews. So anyway, but I always am composing. Actually, I was when I got into Orange Coast College the second time, and I was exclusively focusing on jazz just so I could learn what the heck I was supposed to do in order to work. I kind of didn't do anything for a while, but I met Alan Remington there, and
oh
Alan
yeah.
Remington was conducting the orchestra along with teaching music business classes and all the stuff that he does. And at some point, my little switch went off again. It's like, it might be time to write a classical piece again. And I chatted with him. He's like, "Well, write it and we'll play it." And that kind of got me back. So always it's so great to have supportive people. And I never really will write something unless there's somebody on the other end that's like, "Oh, will you write something for us?" Or if I ask them, "Hey, can I write something for you?" and they say yes.
Yeah.
So the most recent projects have been with West Coast Wind Quintet, Orange County-based woodwind quintet. Actually, my first piece way back in college was a woodwind quintet. So I love that ensemble. And these guys are great. So we've made a CD and did a couple of show performances of my music. And I'm writing
Is, can
a whole bunch
can
more
we?
music. You want to hear some?
Yeah, can we?
Yeah, yeah. So should I send you the Bandcamp link? You can see it there.
Is that the best thing, or is it on YouTube? Or?
Probably. Or no, yeah, oh actually you're on my YouTube. Let's see if it's on my little channel there. I think there's something we did something during the pandemic, yeah. So if you go to my splash page.
Okay, wait a minute. I'm going to share the screen, and you're going to direct me.
Oh, okay. All right. So
So, okay,
there you are. There I am. So scroll down a little bit to Ron Levy. Yeah, the Ron Levy Compositions Chamber Music.
okay,
So you'll see actually to the left of that, Sixth Sense. Let me tell you a little bit about that. So
yeah.
the pandemic was also Beethoven's 250th year from his birth. And I thought, well, I'll write something with Beethoven. And then we actually had scheduled a concert, which ended up getting postponed a year because of the pandemic. But in the meanwhile, they recorded this pandemic style remote, each person in their own home, of Sixth Sense. And it's based on the Sixth Symphony.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay, yeah.
Okay, so I took Beethoven's themes from different symphonies and then I kind of warped them in my own little way. So that if you want to play that,
Good. We're going to do that right now. Oh, that was funny. Wow, fantastic. I love that. Really cool.
oh, thank you. Thank you.
Wow.
Oops, it looks like that's going to keep, there we go. Yeah, well, thank you. So I did one with the Third Symphony, called it Hero Sandwich, because,
Uh-huh.
it was written for Napoleon. And then he crossed out Napoleon's name and just said it's for a hero. So I call it Hero Sandwich. And then the one was the sixth, one's called Shrimp Salad, and one is called Crooked Lisa, which is based on Fur Elise. Anyway, so we ended up going to the studio and recording them all once the pandemic was over, which I was very happy with. So they did.
Cool. And what about, I'm just curious, I caught my eye, the five pieces for vibraphone. Was it?
Okay, so yeah, Tom Kipp was in their improv class with me and with Doc's improv class, and his son Jonathan Kipp is a percussionist, and he went to get his degree up north somewhere, Sonoma, I think, and as a graduation present, his mother commissioned me to write this piece, and the movements. I'm gonna I'm going to pull up my notes for it because I already forgot all about it. Um, but I do know that the movement, this is the first time where I used jazz standards as a structure, but they don't, but the pieces are not jazz. So it's hidden. And I alluded to them in the titles. For example, give me a second to pull it up because I'll be able to talk a lot more intelligently about it once I have my notes in front of me. I'm glad you asked about that piece because I love to talk about it, but it's a little out of my head and I've kind of forgotten about the details. So let's see here.
My friend says, I love these kinds of treatments. It's got so much of Frank Zappa's crazy mentality right up my alley.
Oh, great. Yeah, thank you. I take that as a huge compliment. When I first moved to Newport Beach, I was going to be a junior in high school. My very first friend and I bonded over Apostrophe. That's the Zappa album that has Yellow Snow and Nanook rubs it and all those things. So needless to say, he was a strong, good catch on that.
Wow.
When I was at master's, I was in school. Oh, couple of my colleagues were working with Zappa to help him with the synclavier. The synclavier had just come out, and they had one. Actually, I did a piece with it at UCLA. Actually, one of my pieces that came out, I'm happiest about. It's not jazz though. Anyway, they would go over, and they were also friends with Nicholas Slanimsky, who knew Zappa. And if you don't know who that is, look him up.
His name is familiar.
Nicholas Slanimsky, great scholar. He conducted the premiere of Vares's the piece that's all percussion whose name escapes me right now because I'm getting old. But anyway, Nicholas Slanimsky, 90-plus-year-old, amazing, very funny scholar, named his cat Grody to the max. Valley Girl. Okay, so here's my notes. So Spacewalk follows the chord changes of Stella by Starlight. So Spacewalk, Stella, Starlight, Spacewalk. Will of the Wisp. The
Yeah.
title plays on Willow Weep for Me, on whose chord changes the movement is based. So if you want to play, I think the whole thing's rather long. I don't know if you want to play the whole thing.
Right. But I can maybe
If you want
play
to play
half
any of
of
it,
it or something.
yeah,
This is
play it as much as you like, and then yeah.
okay, cool.
Thank you. Yeah.
Fun to hear all this. It's really fun.
Yay.
I'm gonna
Yeah, good.
stop. It's really beautiful.
Thank you.
Wow.
So, shall I just tell you what you heard? The first of five, the first two of the set of five. The first one is called Blue Afro,
Okay.
after Afro Blue, but actually not based on the song. That's the only one in the set not based on Mongo Santanaria's Afro Blue in this case. The reason I called it that is the rhythm, bum 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 bum, that goes throughout it is something called, it's a West African groove that we called Achia when I took the West African drumming and dancing classes with Kobla Ladzekbo. And yeah, I
Yeah.
did a
What was
lot
that
more.
name? That was cool.
Oh, the Ladzekbo brothers were, they came from Ghana and taught the whole country how to do African dancing. They were at Cal Arts, they were at Wesleyan, and at
Oh,
UCLA, the brothers. And I dug that. I was way more into that than even woodwind quintets for a while. But anyway,
yeah.
the second one is called Salt, and this is based on Lady is a Tramp, so you might recognize it. Ba dee dee dum.
Yes, I
Da,
did
da, da, right.
recognize it. Yes.
So SALT is an acronym or an anagram of a lady is a tramp. So those are the two you played.
Very cool. Um, what I really liked was that there was you I always tell my students space is not nothing. It's like a note, it means something in the in what you're doing. So that's the effect that I got too. That space was part of the whole composition. It was very beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. I think that sometimes I wonder if I have too many grand pauses, too much space, and should maybe fill some in, sometimes it's a little bit of a compositional dilemma because my idea for putting the space in there might not actually translate.
Yeah,
Sometimes you need to have more information coming in. In other words, something to keep you listening, even though um, I like to use space, but sometimes I wonder if I have too many, and I'll get rid of a few in the course of composing. I'll put a big X through that measure because there's already five measures where nothing happens. Yeah, but I appreciate the comment because I do agree with that. Space
yeah,
is people too.
yeah. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. And I totally understand about, kind of considering that, okay, maybe it's too much space. But then again, when I think as the composition flows, if it brings you into, I call it the aesthetic universe. So if it
Mm,
brings you into that,
mm,
then I think all is well.
yeah.
And but there are such chances that we take in our composition, especially something that lasts and is not improvisation, you know. And it's you have to be brave, I think, to
Mm.
actually create it and leave it there. you know?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. But I mean, the fact that people hire you to do this and also accept your offerings, I mean, that speaks for itself. So apparently you're doing well. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, Nora Rumbango is the name of Ron's album, CD.
The CD, yeah. I have, if you go to my website, ronlevymusic.com, you can sign up for my newsletter and find out when I'm doing gigs, which is every 6 months or less. But also you can find my recorded music links there. So, yeah, rumbango, the idea was to combine rumba and tango because I thought that the music was a combination of rumba and tango. And now I listen to it and I have no idea what I was thinking because I can't hear that at all. It's mostly a rumba, but I guess you could dance a tango to it if you wanted to.
That's funny. It was one of those sudden realizations you had,
Yeah,
and it seemed real at the time.
it seemed real at the time. That's true. Exactly.
That's really funny. Yeah, I love that. I have a lot of those those moments where I have a sudden realization or the muse comes, and I'm like real hot to get on this idea. And then, you know, especially if you let a little time pass, then you go back to it. It's like, huh, I don't get the same hit off of that as I did.
Yeah.
Um, do you get these moments of inspiration like I do? Like, there's a little opening in your mind and then the muse comes in and goes, beep.
I mean, I will hear tunes. A tune will pop into my head, usually in the most inopportune time. I'm on my way out the door. But I'll always go and either write it down. It's usually just a ditty, no more than 4 or 8 measures, so it doesn't take that long. I'll write it down, or else I'll play it and record it in my voice memo, so I have a record of it. I've got a whole bunch of these, and occasionally they make it into pieces too. So, but that's I think the muse for me as far as stuff coming to me from who knows where. It'll be these tunes, melodies, and sometimes it's in the middle of the night, and I'm like, half the time I'll get up and I'll write it down. The other half I'll be, I'm not getting up. Sorry, Muse. I'm tired. This one's gonna have to let that go. So there've been a couple like that that were really potent, and I felt it strongly. I needed to work with it. Uh, yeah, isn't that an interesting thing?
Very.
And
You
something
know,
on that topic, which is to jazz. I also feel like, where does that come from? Because when you're like improvising bebop style, you know, where do those ideas really come from? I mean, I'm not just recycling patterns I learned. It's not that. It's,
oh,
I mean, if I am, then nobody wants to hear that. So, but you know what I mean? It's like when it's going well, you're sort of speaking a language. I feel like, and anyway, my little woo woo on that is that there's like this jam band up in the, up there somewhere, and Bud Powell's in it, and they just sort of like feeding it. Okay, I just really feel like it comes from there, from somewhere outside of me, and that's, I think, what it's a very a vital language. It's a living language, not a dead language. Bebop.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, it's not. And well, lately I've been I'm spiritually inclined, and so I've been listening for a long time to on YouTube to people like Eckhart Tolle and this guru named Muji and his guru Papa G. I just I love how that makes me feel. It's they stress that I I am not I am Cathy, I am a woman, I whatever. It's just I. They stress that and to quiet all else, and you don't have to um, you know push it off of you. You don't have to do any action like that. You just have to be there and observe. And then read I've been rereading Kenny Werner's book Being the Instrument, and which I find several things in it, stimulating in that way. Basically, people just say, do the work to prepare your instrument, and then get out of the way, be in the moment, and do whatever you have to do. I mean, I have certain things that I have found over the years that to prepare myself in the moment, like it's good if I can hear myself singing, for instance, but and when I can, and when these other kind of concepts are working, like I had a great experience in I was just out of the country in Norway, and I was playing with an old friend of mine, a guitarist, and a bass player who I hadn't actually played with in 30 years, and he was a very strong player along the bebop lines, and his attack was not on the downbeat, right? It was somewhere else, but he was totally tied into the time. And we did 3 gigs together, and as the gigs progressed, I was reminded again, once again, I mean, I probably, if I was working all the time, it would just be happening for me, this particular realization. But once again, I realized I just am solid with my time. He's solid with his time. The guitar player is solid with his time. And the fun comes in when everybody's doing whatever they want, but we're all connected to the same time. And so there's kind of a fear involved, and then there's a freedom and this kind of a free joy that when you're and also like what you were talking about, this open, you're not concentrating on the effort of doing it. You're concentrating on being there, I guess. And then it's just gorgeously happening. And like you say, where is it coming from? It's coming through you, but it's not originating in you. It's like originating somewhere else. It's a gorgeous experience, that, I mean, that's why we continue doing it, right?
Yeah. 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 You're right. You're right. It's like we're like the vessel, but we're also, if we weren't there as a vessel, it wouldn't happen. So
Yeah.
we are part of the creative process, but it's just a matter of how we are setting ourselves up to
Yeah.
connect with everything else that's the other musicians, the space, the sky, the planets. We're getting ourselves kind of aligned with everything. So it's all making the music, but I think so. It's just an interesting thought I had about how, like for me, I mean, it's like you hear the note you want to play, and you hope that you hit the right note. You hope that your chops are there so that you can play what you're wanting to hear, or what you're feeling, what you're hearing, I guess you could say. And so that's enough to work on, right? That's really the work of being a musician, is not only in your practice time, but when you're there in the moment actually performing, is just paying attention to your posture and your balance and your staying loose and just working properly, like an engine has to work properly to get you to San Francisco or wherever you're going. Just getting all the parts are moving correctly, and then you get to go to San Francisco.
Yeah. You know, yeah. I mean, so, I've been singing all my life. And looking back, I mean, I've had such different concepts at the moment, of singing. Um, and right now I'm in a growth period again of technique. And that, along with this kind of more spiritual concept, is a very interesting combination for me because, like what you were just describing, I have to be aware that this is an instrument. I think in this moment of time, I don't know if I ever just looked at it like that. Uh, I don't think I have. And so now I'm looking and going, yeah, this is an instrument. I can't be relaxed like I was before. Before I didn't really think about it. I was relaxed. I sounded good when I was young to me. I sounded pretty good, like in my 20s and stuff. But now it's like I'm trying to make it make sense in my mind now. It's different. And then, so the fact that this is an instrument makes me do different things. It's like, okay, it's an instrument, here's I'm not relaxed. It's like, it's an instrument. I have to train myself to sit with that, so if I practice at home like that, then it's probably going to get into my performance too, so I won't have to think about it, and there's other things like, and I know that wind players especially go through the same things. I talk about this all the time with wind players, like right in the middle, right where the or the instrument changes from a more hearty sound to a thinner sound. Right in there, this is like the question area that all wind people deal with. you know, a horn player deals probably with the embouchure and the continuous flow of air, whereas I deal with my vocal cords and continuous flow of air. And so there's a lot. And what I'm also experiencing, and I've looked at this over the last, I don't know how many years, not many years, maybe 10 years, which is when I have a certain state of mind, when I'm communicating the idea of, when I'm communicating the real communication of the song. For me, it includes lyrics, right? But I have to be real about it. I have to be real. And then when I do that, my technique works better, which is fascinating to me. And then, it just adds the fodder for me, for my desire to have that happen again and again and again and again. So I have to do whatever it takes to get to that point. I'm really fascinated by it. As a matter of fact, during the pandemic, I wrote this little book. It's very little. So anyway, this book, I had been collecting notes over the years from teaching and observing my students and singing jazz and life. And I noticed that the same lesson applied to each one. And so it's just kind of a fascinating thing for me. And because I knew about those three things, I kind of formulated my ideas and I just wrote that little book just for the fun of it. And, but that also spreads to many things. Those three areas just happen to be what I'm focused on this lifetime, but somebody else may be piano player or driving a truck or whatever, being a housewife, whatever you're really focused on and doing, the same lessons apply. I really believe that in all through life. So I just think it's fascinating. I love it.
Yeah, that's wonderful stuff, Kathy. Yeah. I mean, you brought to mind either if you're whether you're a piano player or a truck driver, for example. But even if you're not a truck driver and you're just a piano player, you also might go to the kitchen to cook a meal, and then you might need to go, to the gas station to put gas in your car, and then you might need to, unpack a box from Prime. And any of those things, you can bring a mindfulness to how you do it. You can be, I got to get this thing open so I just cut myself on the cardboard. Or you
Yeah.
can be like, I'm going to open this Prime box in the best way I know how. And I'm going to be mindful. And it becomes an enjoyable, anything you do becomes kind of more meaningful and enjoyable. I like to think of, the reason I brought up the kitchen is I like to cook. I don't really like to clean up. But I've changed my mind about that. It used to be I'd see a whole bunch of dirty dishes piled up, and I'd be like, "Argh." Now I'm like, I'll do it a little later. But eventually I'll come in and I'll kind of get into a zen of cleaning the dishes, and you end up with a nice clean kitchen and doing it with that mentality. It's not exactly bebop, but
I know exactly what you're talking about. I agree with you. I think, sometimes it can be challenging, but that's
oh, for
okay.
sure.
You know?
For sure it can be challenging. That's when you find out how good you how evolved you are is when you get close to that breaking point. Maintain your I know I'm running late and I want to be late to that meeting, but I want to make sure this has to get so you can get to where the pressures are building, like was happening to me this morning actually. Trying to get some things together and to be here on time was a bit challenging. Things suddenly happen. Suddenly my coffee cup spilled in my back pocket. I wasn't really expecting that little extra thing to deal with. So it's like, I
How
only
did
got a little mad
yeah, how did your coffee cup get in your back
because
pocket?
it was one of these travel mugs. Oh, it's not in here. So I'm going to get a new travel mug now that screws on tightly because this one doesn't. And it was in my bag, and I was bending over to fix something, and my wife says, "Oh, your coffee's spilling." I'm like,
Oh
it spilled
God.
all over me. I didn't even notice. How silly.
Hey, I have a question
Yeah.
from my friend Banush.
Okay.
She said, any advice for dealing with imposter syndrome or self-doubt for artists in general?
Imposter syndrome. Is that is an actual syndrome, or in other words, you
Well,
think you're an imposter? Yeah.
yeah, that's a phrase that's been used for a while now. Basically, it means you're doing something like you're writing or playing but truly you kind of feel, and I've heard some of the top players talk about it too. You basically feel like you're an imposter.
I feel that if you're just being your authentic self when you play a note or you draw a line or apply some paint color or whatever artistic thing, if you're being your authentic self and you're into it, you're not an imposter. I don't know how somebody else, their opinion of that doesn't matter anyway. It's really how you feel about yourself, right? So um, that's just what comes to me off the top of my head. As long as you're really motivated to do it because you want to draw a picture or you want to play an instrument. I don't know if I can really offer anything beyond that right now,
Well,
without thinking about it.
yeah, I mean, so this is what Kenny Werner talks about, basically. And that's why Berkeley created a department called Effortless Mastery on his book and put him in charge 10 years ago, and you can get a degree in it.
Wow.
So, it's not like what you just described is not something that just a few people deal with or can understand, but and so you are, I totally agree with that. Authenticity is where it's at, right? If Joan Streisand is singing a song and I'm singing the same song, but we're singing it from our own self, there's no comparison. It's just if you're really singing from yourself, that's you. And if I'm really singing from myself, that's me. And that's but there is this I think there's this imagery of comparison that we've been groomed to have over the years. And we're all, I think that's where the imposter syndrome comes from. It's like it's so embedded in us that it's easy to create something and not be, I guess, just not be okay with it. You know, like what are they going to think of it? Or, is it going to be, who's going to notice it? Or why am I doing it? Or where is it going? Those kind of ideas, right? As a matter of fact, she said developing an authentic self sounds like a wise solution, but how would you recommend working on that, particularly in this age of many distractions, being everywhere, especially online?
Is she talking music particularly? Do you know?
Yes, she is.
Okay, so I think I can relate to this a little bit. Um, there have been times when I've been on the bandstand with everybody else is way more experienced than me, and it's intimidating. And I could say that maybe I felt like I really shouldn't be there, or I was. Why did they?
Yeah,
Whose idea was this? I feel like an imposter. Let's just say,
right.
and um, and then they'll play a solo, and then I'll be like, you know. But what's really happening now that I can look at that from afar is I am less experienced. It's okay that I'm less experienced. In 20 years, I'll have the amount of experience they have now if I keep studying and just trying to learn. So, yeah. The bottom line, I guess, is if you apply yourself to whatever the craft is and step by step, there's much to it, right? With jazz, I mean, there's a ton
Yeah,
you have to learn about in terms of harmony, rhythm,
yeah,
and then not even about executing it, just understanding how the music is put together, and then why you would choose this note over that note, and then you have to learn how to actually produce a good tone. So there's a lot to it, and those are things that just come with doing it over and over and over again with the mind of not doing something wrong over and over again, but continuing to learn and what is that? I need to understand what that is, and then so each little thing you learn adds to your being less and less of an imposter.
Yeah, and you're describing the process as opposed to the end result, which a lot of people have mentioned over the years, right? It's the process that's important. It's not the end result,
Yeah,
right?
that's right.
And just like you were talking about in the kitchen,
Yeah.
yeah, the process is, oh, let's clean up the kitchen and enjoy it, not, oh, God damn it, the kitchen is a mess, not that, and it has to be clean, No, it's the process. Also, one time I had an experience similar to what you were saying. It was a long time ago. I don't know, had to be 30 years ago, maybe. I was playing at a really nice room with a top jazz piano player. He was for 2 nights. He was really good. He was intimidatingly good. And the first night, I was intimidated. And I'm sure I sang very safely, and whatever. Went home. My first husband was he was very spiritual and he was very, what's the word? Kind of proactive, like he would give me things to do that scared me, but I did it, points of view and stuff. So he said, when I came home, he said, okay, so what does he have that you don't have? And I thought about it and I said, experience. And he said, okay. He said, is he a bigger spiritual being than you? And I said, no, no. As a matter of fact, I probably think about it more than he does. And he said, okay. That was all he said. So the second night I went and I had a different point of view. I wasn't intimidated. I was just like, well, yeah, he has more experience than I do. It's okay. I know what I have and I'm okay. And I had a great time the second night. And that was one of my big lessons and along the path. Um, and Banush also says curiosity then might be the cure. And that is true, Banush, because we know curiosity is creativity. So, or creativity is curiosity, whatever you want to say. So, yeah, perspective. She's digging it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. I think curiosity is the cure. That's a bumper sticker right there. Keep that one.
Hey, Banush, there you go. It's your bumper sticker.
And you were fortunate to have a human being that could say the right thing that helped you. They
Yeah,
helped you at that moment. And because what if you had had someone that came home and said, "Well, you're really not that good. What makes you think?" I mean, in other words, that could have
yeah,
really gone the other way.
yeah.
And I just wanted to say on that, when I've been in those situations with more experienced people, they're usually very helpful
Yeah, that's true.
and just and if they're not spiritually bigger. So, but in the time it can be like you don't know that, and so you don't know just to stand up or just to say, well, I'm going to ignore you because you're not giving me good vibes. But generally, people who want to help, and that's a big part of it, is they're
I agree
supportive
with
and
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, supportive. Usually, the more involved people that you would look up to and feel intimidated by are actually, I don't know about usually, but often they're also more mature emotionally and will be helpful if you are open to that. Yeah.
they're at least more mature in performance issues, right?
Well, that at least, yeah, but also that they mostly will be prefer to help you and just give you a smaller role if that's all they feel you're able to do at this time on that particular song, for example. I'm thinking of one time where I really wasn't comping good according to the very much more experienced person, and who turned to me and said, "Okay, do you know who Groove Holmes is? Just play a Groove Holmes thing." Dun, dun, dun. I'm like, okay, I can do that. I'll just do that because nothing else I was doing was making him happy. So that was perfect. He told me what he needed me to do, and I just did that. And then later I could think, okay, now what the heck was, I could start learning other, I could expound on that.
Yeah,
So that
yeah,
was a
yeah.
helpful thing, although he didn't say it in the most helpful way. He was still being helpful.
Yeah.
And that was the bottom line. And that's just one kind of a crude example of what I'm talking about, though. Generally, people, I'm sort of 20 years behind all the musicians I've worked with because I started late. And so I've been working with mostly people that are, better than me and more experienced. And they're always helpful. It's like, thank you, people. You guys are
Yeah.
great. You're the best.
I always tell my students, students have a tendency when they're on the gig to rush through, especially with a band, a full band, to rush through preparing, getting the groove, first in your body and knowing what tempo you want and all that stuff. And I always tell them, do not ignore that. The band wants you to get it together. They don't want you to rush through and, just so they can play. No, they want a great experience, that you're a part of. So, yeah, singers, definitely have a tendency towards thinking like that. Um, I go to Japan a lot. Japan, the singers have points of view that, well, it's mostly women singers there, and it's comes from basically a suppressed viewpoint, because women in that society, for since the beginning of the society have had a certain position.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting people, and I've seen students also kind of develop an attitude in order to help themselves be themselves. They've developed this, oh, I'm just going to be myself, because they think that's the way to do it. And for them, because of their experiences, that's what they feel they have to do. It's very interesting. The layers run so deep.
Yeah, I haven't been to Japan yet, and I'd like to go.
Yeah, with your nature, yeah, I think you would love it and they would love you. I've been there many times, so I kind of get it. Yeah.
And just that they appreciate the music
Oh, yeah.
that we love to play.
It's kind of another planet. You walk down the street, Ron, and, there's music playing in the street, I mean, over like a loudspeaker,
Oh,
even in shopping malls or like the subway or the airport. Charlie Parker is playing. It's not just like smooth jazz. It's like people like Charlie Parker. It's like you're like, wow, you know. I think they think it's relaxing or something. I don't think, they're making this artistic statement, yeah, we're gonna play Charlie Parker. But anyway, it's definitely other planetary.
right.
What did you say, Banush? Heavily patriarchal, that society, like my background. She's Iranian. Imposter syndrome is a pandemic among women of those kind of places. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I need to learn more about that, what that term is. So I'll look into, I'll look it up.
Yeah. And also the second part of her question, her original question, because she says, how would you recommend working on that, particularly in this age of many distractions, being everywhere, especially online?
You
Yeah.
gotta you gotta get a teacher or get into a class, I feel like, or else at least with a colleague, practice together with somebody, so you have some interaction with a person. Um, those are that would be my suggestions on how to work on. I mean, you can work on your own to a certain extent, but um, having a teacher can really expedite progress.
There you go, Banu.
I love teaching. I learned so much. Oh, tell her she should get a student if she wants to learn more.
Oh, yeah. That's so true. I don't, Banush, I don't think we've talked about that. That's a good idea. Yeah, because when you have a student, then you see how you think because you have to explain to them a concept.
There's a really interesting alchemy that I can't explain about that, but yeah, I have learned so much. I mean, it sounds like a cliche to say it, but very recently, having to do with piano technique,
Okay.
I taught something. And you know, when you
Yeah.
teach something, the teaching is like performing. We were talking about how you're sort of channeling and you don't
Yeah.
always know where it's coming from. I
Yeah.
mean, even though there's a lot of knowledge there, sometimes I don't know where it's coming from. And
Yeah.
I really think it's coming from the connection with the student
Yeah.
and what their needs are. Because
Yeah.
sometimes I will come out with something that I didn't even know I knew. But
Yeah.
anyway, what happened with this thing was a thing that I had actually been aware of for a long time. And but it wasn't until I taught it
Yeah.
that it clicked for me, and then my practice completely changed. And this is just in the last month.
Oh,
I started applying it. I knew about it before, but I didn't know I couldn't apply it before, and now I could apply it, and it has completely changed the way I play and present at the instrument. It's amazing.
can you
So thank you,
share?
student.
Can you share that?
Yeah, I can. I can actually. So I'll go back just a little bit. One of the reasons I left dance accompanying was actually I had to stop playing because of pain in my arm that became so unbearable. I couldn't play without extreme pain. And so I left the job, came back to Orange County, took summer off. I'd never taken a whole summer off of playing the piano. And then I got into the improv class and started playing again. Oh, the pain went away, by the way. I stopped playing, no pain in my arms. Started playing the class, boom, the pain comes right back. So, another fortuitous angel, somebody I had met, said, "Oh, you need to call Dorothy Taubman." I'm like, "Who's Dorothy Taubman?" She said, "Just call her." So, Dorothy Taubman is a 70, she's gone now, 70 plus year old piano teacher in New York City who specialized in injured pianists. And I told her what had been happening. And by the way, there had been a dance concert that I had, the pain was there, and they said, "You just play the concert. Just get through the concert. And then you can take your time off." And so for 3 weeks, I kept going, playing through the pain, ice bags on my arms in between. I mean, it was really, really bad. So I got Dorothy Talman's phone number and I called her right then and there. I think I wouldn't have called her if I knew what a giant she was. I would have been too scared. But I didn't know who she was. And she, with her New York accent, I told her what happened. She said, "If somebody told you to walk in a busy New York City street full of cars, would you do it?" I said, "No, actually, you're right. I should, no." So one of her students who also helped in that regard teaches at UCI. And so we made the connection. And for a year, I had to retrain how I played the instrument. I had to drop all my repertoire and go back to just 5 fingers and learn about how to proper height, how to move, a whole this much worth of stuff to learn. And so I went through that, and now I can play the piano. So one of the things was, you're sitting at the piano, and it's about this wide, right? And you're sitting here, and you're reaching over there, and you're reaching over there, and your torso isn't moving. And so my teacher, during one lesson said, "Let your torso go with where your hands are." I'm like, "Oh, that makes sense. Oh, this is much better." This is like 10 years ago. This is 15 years ago. I'm still not, it's okay. I can play, But I taught that very thing. That's the thing I was mentioning earlier. And something clicked in my head. It wasn't just that your torso moves. It's actually, this is the analogy I came up with. So get ready, world. So if you think about a wagon wheel,
Yeah.
right? And the outside of the wheels, turning as the wagon goes on its way to the gold rush. But as the outside's turning a lot, the inside's not turning very much. You turn the inside a little bit, the outside goes a lot, right? So the inside of the wheel is your spine, and the outside of the wheel is where your hands are. And if I just turn my spine a tiny bit, my hand goes all the way up an octave, 2 octaves. So if I have to get from here to here, if I don't do that, it's a big, you know. But if I just turn the wheel a little bit, everything goes right to it. And then add to that, you actually, you know, move the torso a bit, and just actually it clicked in a way that it never had before. Now I'm using it all the time, even if I'm not going a big distance. I'm now moving from my center as if it's the center of a wheel, and it's pretty cool. I can play things I couldn't play before. The first Chopin etude in C major, out of his first book of etudes, has these big leaps, big arpeggios. Like you have to go, you know, a tenth, and it's really big, right?
Yeah.
It's not like little arpeggios; they're really big, and I never could get that. Now it's like, oh, piece of cake.
Yeah.
I'm not playing it up to tempo yet, but it's suddenly very different. So that was just one example of something that really, you know, if I hadn't had that student on that day with that particular problem that he needed to solve, I might not have ever gotten to it. So get yourself a student. Yeah, it's awesome.
That's cool. That's
Pretty cool.
really
Yeah.
that's really great. It's a really great lesson. Super. Super amazing. Oh, Banush said maybe. Is that part of the Alexander technique?
No. So, but I'm aware of the Alexander technique, and that's very, very helpful stuff. But this is a little different. I mean, they're all, you know, Alexander, Ida Rolf.
Yeah.
They're all looking to solve the same thing. Like, how do we move? How do we move better? How do we
Yeah.
hold? So yeah, but this is very particular to the. I'm not sure if it applies. You know, yeah, it's not an exact. Yeah,
Yeah. It's not an
connection.
exact Alexander
Yeah,
technique,
it's the Levy
although
technique.
they might talk about okay.
It's the wagon wheel technique. Is what,
It's cool. What I'm working on something right now that is for me my voice technique for I went through a number of different things. First I just sang. You know, I was in a musical family, we just sang, you know, no problem. And then basically and I learned a few instruments and then I went to college and in those days it was the it was the mid 70s and you know, if you were in a band, you played Chicoria and Blood, Sweat, and Tears and Motown stuff. And, you know, you sang everything. And I developed nodes, and then I went through a process of healing, and then moved out to California. This is just kind of it in a nutshell. And I found a teacher eventually that was focused on the vocal cords. And myself, and two other people, we all became teachers in her lineage, and it was good. It was very logical and applicable, you know. And I did that for many years. Then I I have a chronic cough that has affected my breathing, and I never for whatever reason, I never had a teacher who focused on breathing with me over the years. Never. And so in the later years, you know, towards now, it was like, why, you know, why did no teacher ever focus on breathing? It has to be part of it's an important part of how the body works, right? And making sound for my instrument. And so that's part of, like you spoke of the body being loose and moving. So my body also, it has to be loose and without being relaxed. It has to be the instrument, but it also has to be loose so that it's not tight and restrictive of the airflow. And then, So I'm familiar with the vocal cords and how they work, but there's a few years ago, I found myself moving up into my upper register in an extremely light way because inside I was afraid of hurting myself. But that's actually opposite of what you need to do. You have to utilize the vocal cords as you go up, but you have to learn how that feels inside. The resonance inside your body, the resonant chamber, is a bit mysterious. For some people, there are those people who just are born to do it, but that's a very small percentage, really. Most of us have to find that spot within this instrument and allow it to happen and utilize the vocal cords without pushing and straining to do so. So that also entails taking a breath and allowing it to move through. So there's these things that are intricate parts of this instrument, and well, I just described exactly what I've been working on. This whole process. Yeah, I can sing. Nobody's going to throw rocks at me, and but for my own pleasure of producing a sound and having this instrument work, fluidly, then those are the technical things that I have to work on, and I do every day. A little bit at least every day. I need to remind myself of these points of view and how the body should work, and and hopefully get excited about a feeling that I've created and do it all with kind of a joy, so that I'm practicing excitement and joy. So when I get out on the gig, that's something that I've practiced. So it's naturally in there. It's a
Super
lot.
cool. Yeah, it is. It's super cool. Yeah, you're
Yeah.
practicing their joy. That's
Yeah.
really cool. Yeah.
That cool. I actually stole that from Larry Kuntz, because Larry Kuntz, I've been friends with for years. And there was one time, he was very hard on himself, even after playing something absolutely magnificent. And then he had a heart attack, actually, at a young age. And then after that, he really changed his point of view. One time I asked him, "So what are you working on lately?" And he said, "I'm working on what I have to with joy." And that blew my mind. It changed my mind. And I realized, yeah, you have to practice joy. You can't practice like analyzing, and I mean, you have to analyze if you're a student, but you also have to practice with joy of creation too, because anything you practice appears, you know.
Right.
So I love that.
Yeah, that's right. Well, if you think about what your role is when you're up there performing, it's for the listener to have an experience that you're providing for them. And if you provide some joy for them, they'll want to come back and hear you again, and that's a win. If you're providing
Yeah.
them to be tight and serious and analytical, then maybe that's what you want to happen, but probably not.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's the end result. I mean, there are some technicians of their instruments that I can't stand listening to. I turn it off because
Me
it's like
too.
I can hear all the great chops you're doing there, but it isn't really saying anything to me. So change channel.
Me
And
too.
so yeah, right. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
And then you mentioned the joy, that one of the things my teacher Nina Skolnick at UCI, and I mentioned, would say is it should feel euphoric to play. When I first played for her, it was not feeling euphoric. There was pain and tension and blah blah blah. But they say, if it's all working correctly, you'll have a sense of euphoria in your body because it'll feel so good to move that. And
I love
so,
that.
no,
That's a really good thing to remember. Actually, Kenny Werner speaks about that in his book, although not in such eloquent terms. He's pretty blatant about, what he says. But anyway, he basically says, yeah, it should be orgasmic, it should be yeah, this is why we do it, because of that feeling. You know, it's gorgeous. It's a gorgeous
Yeah.
feeling. But I love that. Euphoric. It should be euphoric. And yeah, it's
Ecstatic is another, it might be a better word too, for, in
yeah,
terms of the, in between the two that I said and what you said.
yeah,
That makes me think of people like Zakir Hussain or the Indian classical musicians I've heard, where it really feels like there's an ecstatic
yeah,
experience happening,
yeah.
in those ragas towards the end when it's all flying. That
That's so
stuff really,
true.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
You know who else comes to mind? Shelley Berg. You
yeah,
know him? He's,
absolutely.
I just saw him a few months ago. He's ecstatic the whole time. He's just totally, he never goes like this. Never. He's just, whatever he's playing, he's like ecstatic. Yeah, it's really, it's a good example to follow.
Because it translates to the music. If you
Yeah,
close your eyes and you're not watching that person, you're going to hear that and feel those feelings because it's translating through the sound of the music in the notes. Sometimes it can
absolutely.
be distracting to watch somebody who's moving a lot when they're playing their instrument. But if it's getting the job done, there's one classical Mozart player who I can't watch because it makes me a little seasick because they move a lot. But when I close my eyes, they're the best Mozart player I've heard. And so there you go.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Um, let's see, back to Banush. She's in England, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
jolly
back
good.
to back to
Sorry.
authenticity. What do you do as artists to keep yourself excited about playing and creating? Do you have any favorite activities to recharge yourself, to bring you back joy to your practice?
Because sometimes I've gone through phases where I don't practice because when I sit down to practice, it's not joyous at all. And so, like when this thing happened that I mentioned with the wheel, suddenly I'm scheduling practice time because I've
Mm,
found a new thing that's very exciting and I'm enjoying it and it's giving me a lot of pleasure. And it's making my playing better too, by the way. So that's um, teaching,
yeah.
which I do for a living, also contribute to other things. I like to take walks and eat tacos, listen to music. I find that this question of joy and practicing that we keep touching on is so important. It's better to get 15 quality minutes in of joyous practicing than 2 hours of non-joy. Really, I can't stand doing my 4 octave scales in every key. I stopped a long time ago. So
Yeah.
I might miss a note here and there, but who cares? Tacos.
I love that. Kenny Werner, I mean, his playing is really beautiful, and he really comes from that space, where everything is fine, everything is a
Hmm.
possibility.
Hmm.
It's exciting, it's
Hmm.
joyful. It's
Hmm.
even the dark stuff, it's beautiful.
Well, I hope I'm not interrupting, but I mentioned earlier practicing with someone, which I remember reading somewhere, one of our, 50s jazz musician heroes. I don't remember which one, but they said, yeah, we would practice together. I'd
Yeah,
get together and we would practice. It's a lot more fun to practice jazz or play jazz with somebody than alone. I mean, I can go through my scales and make sure, I know how to play them. But uh, either on a gig or just practicing and rehearsing and slow it down and try different things, interacting with each other makes it much more joyous and fun
yeah,
to just to play through tunes and do whatever you're working on. It's more
yeah, yeah.
fun. Yeah, I think
Totally.
that's the key. If you're not interested in practicing, then set up some rehearsal and do it that way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Banush, are you asking a question directly about what he just said? She said improvising, you mean? I think he was probably talking about everything, just right,
Actually, yeah,
playing
yeah,
with people.
probably everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh.
I used to get together with Michelle Weir and one other person, varied other people, and actually scat over Jamie Abersol.
Yeah, well, that's great, Jamie.
Yeah,
Does she know those play along, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very good stuff. I love that.
Yeah. And then
It's the juices flowing.
this, this year I've gone down on creating gigs, maybe because I'm concentrating on recording or whatever. But so I've been inviting people over to play, which has been really nice. Singers don't generally do that because usually when you're a singer and you invite somebody over, they want to get paid, whereas musicians will get together. But actually I have enough friends that I can say, hey, you want to just come over and play? And that's, yeah, great. It's really fun. Let's hear another thing that you've done. It'd be fun to hear your band, a band.
Yeah, so let's see. I wonder what's on there. Because I have done a couple things that I recorded onto video with a group. And I'm just not sure if it's on my YouTube or not. So let me see if I can find one. Tell you where to look.
Yeah. I mean, we do have Invitation. That sounded like a long time ago.
Yeah, that well also it's really bad audio quality on that.
Oh, okay. The Paul Navidad Quintet, Willow.
You could try it, that was that was when Kikuya changed to be something else. It had a different name, but that was in the same space, except we were over by where the sushi bar used to be. Look at how young I look. I think I was 12.
I know, you look like a different person, actually.
That's Gary Wing, Bart Rodnack's. Paul was in there, and I think Craig Fundiga on vibraphone.
Yeah. Okay, now, now that actually, did you have a vibes sound on? It almost sounded like there were two vibes.
No, I didn't. I was playing an acoustic pretty. I actually don't remember. I wouldn't have been playing a vibe sound though. I don't know why it sounded that way. But maybe I was using an electric piano sound. I don't know. Maybe we'll
Yeah.
get to the solo and then we'll know what I was playing.
Well, I was
I thought I did that
asking.
too. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, my thought that I had was, you know, how piano player and guitar players always talk about playing with each other, you know,
Yeah.
that it's challenging,
Right.
you know. So I was thinking that, but then I was listening and it sounded like there was the vibes, boom, don't,
Yeah.
and but then there was a soloing going on that actually sounded like vibes. So it was
That's probably
interesting.
just me overplaying under the solo. I don't really know. Yeah, I couldn't tell. It sounded kind of, maybe he overdubbed his part like Charlie Mingus did on the Massey Hall concert. Should we listen to a
Yeah,
little more? You know what I'm talking about, right?
I do actually. I was just
Yeah.
talking about that with somebody. Yeah. Let's see. Let's see.
My favorite live album of all time, by the way, so it's not a diss.
Oh.
From West Side Story there. Nice.
I just want to say here it sounds like electric piano, right?
Yeah, it's quite possible. It's so long time ago, I just don't remember what I played. It's probably just a crappy keyboard.
Yeah, that happens, doesn't it? cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
listening back to those hazy, lazy, gray, crazy days of summer, I feel like I was a little bit playing a little bit loose and free with time in there, but you know, it is what it is.
Yep,
You
certainly
just
is.
keep on growing, you keep on growing. But yeah,
Yep.
that must have been my P90, my Yamaha P90 keyboard, which did not have an awesome, I think it was acoustic piano patch, but it was
Oh,
just, you know,
yeah,
that's what I had.
yeah. That's it is what it is, like you said. Sometimes I'll think I'm having the greatest time and I'll record while I'm doing it, and then I listen back and I'm like, yeah, nah.
I know what I was trying to do
Okay.
there.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah. So, yeah. Um, we've talked about a lot of stuff. Um, these are the kind of conversations I like, it's just like a wanders everywhere. It's a little spiritual. Banush said, you're funny, Banush. So he said, Ron said he was a late starter. How late are we talking about? I'm in need of some hope. Because she actually
Yeah,
started not too long ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so I started playing the piano when I was 6. So I started with lessons. So I was able to play the piano pretty young, but starting this journey of learning to play jazz, I didn't really start until I was in maybe 35, I think is when I moved back to the county. And yeah, I really didn't know anything. So I really started, like I said, about 20 years later than my peers. Um, so there, yeah.
So there.
But I mean, I have a student had a student who was over 80. I had another student who was in his 70s, just kind of starting. You can start with where you're at now, and you can learn. Unless you've had a lobotomy, in which case think of something else to do. But you can always learn, and also the technique of playing the piano. Like if you can do this, if you can wiggle your fingers, I don't know, if you can do that, you can play the piano. Is that her instrument? Piano?
Oh, yes, piano and singing and
And if you can
songwriting.
talk, you can sing, right? So the knowledge, the physical attributes are already fine. And
Yeah,
so you just want to learn knowledge and train your ear. And every day you get a little better. Yeah.
yeah.
I hope that helped with the hope thing. I want to encourage you. Do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I just heard a friend of mine, a piano player who sings, and his voice is not what I'd call a perfect instrument, but his phrasing and his expression is like, 300%. So good. You're just like, damn, it's really good. So, again, talking about, getting your instrument together and, is it perfect or does someone notice or, those kind of things. It's really not about that. It's about expression. And then the authenticity comes in there too.
I feel
Um,
like if it feeds you to do something, you should just do it. And
yeah, yeah.
this is obviously a very extreme example, but Florence Foster Jenkins, I watched that movie, and she was someone who just loved to sing. You know who I'm talking about,
I
right?
don't.
They made a movie, but she was a real person. The movie starred Meryl Streep, and
Uh-huh.
she was somebody who sang opera, and she could not sing in tune. She could not sing a note in tune.
Oh,
No notes were in tune from beginning to the end. It's a wonderful movie. I highly recommend it because uh, it's a beautiful thing. But this is a person who loved
what
to
is it called
sing.
again?
Florence Foster Jenkins.
Okay.
I'm not sure if that's the name of the movie. That's her name, and you can easily find it
Yeah,
with
yeah.
Meryl Streep. And you know, that's an extreme example, but it's if it feeds your soul to do something, you just got to do it.
Yeah.
And then if it's becomes too much of a labor, then you can stop doing it too, and say I did it for this amount of time, and that fed me, and now I'm going to go take up oil painting, and that's
Yeah.
fine
Yeah.
too. That's what my
Yeah.
student did. He quit after a year. He had a trio show in Las Vegas as part of a conference he was going to be. He was like big in another area. So he was going to be there and with a lot of supporters, and he was going to play a set of jazz with a trio, some Ellington and he did it. And then he quit. And then he's like, I can't do this anymore. It's too hard. I'm going to go write a novel now.
That's great. Yeah, Banush actually knows that movie, by the way.
Yeah,
It's in 2016, and it is the same name.
yeah, good.
And she also said that she's not aware that she got a lobotomy, but then I said
Good.
I had a lobotomy.
I'd rather have a bottle in front of me.
Yeah, 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 yeah. We gotta, I read something that I love, which is all emotions stem from two emotions, fear or love.
Wow.
And I just, that is a very interesting point to remember, in many different things. And yeah,
Yeah, because those two things are not really compatible with each other, are they?
no,
So it's one or the other.
yeah,
So yeah, go with love. Love's a good direction. Fear,
yeah, yeah,
it has a use. It helps us with survival,
yeah,
and but you don't want to nurture it as a pastime, probably.
yeah, yeah,
So that's interesting.
yeah, isn't it?
Interesting stuff.
Roland is saying Jimmy Durante is a great example of that. His singing spirit was amazing, though he had no voice. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true.
That's right. That's right. Billie Holiday too. I think because she, in later, her voice kind of deteriorated to some extent, but her later recordings are some of my favorite recordings. It's just
Yeah,
beautiful. I mean, she never lost her ability to hold the pitch, but the timbre kind of because from abuse, I guess. But man, her phrasing and her stuff, I love that. Songs for Distingue. So that's kind of makes me think of that too.
I heard a recording. You might have heard it because I think it's come around on digital or CD, but she was in the studio with Jimmy Rolls.
Oh, I've heard this.
Yeah, and I actually
Yeah.
talked to the engineer at one point, and he was he had remained kind of pissed off that had gotten out into the public, without him getting recognition. But anyway, and she was talking like this, she was talking just like whatever. I mean, it was bad. And then she would sing, they were rehearsing, and then she would sing, and it was like, drop dead gorgeous. Yeah, it was
Yeah.
an interesting recording.
Uh,
Well, it's been 2 hours.
wow. Time flies.
I know, isn't it
That's been
fun?
wonderful.
Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
I would love to play together sometime. It would be really nice.
I hope we can. Let's set that up.
Yeah, yeah. Anything you want people to know about? Your website, ronlevymusic.com.
Because go ahead and go to there and sign up for my newsletter. It won't be a spam thing. I used to send them out every couple of weeks. Now it's every few months or whenever there's a show coming up.
Yeah,
Which is, right now there are no shows coming up. So, but if you want to know when something is, I've got a couple of things planned with no dates yet. So, ronlevymusic.com, and then I have a couple of interesting recording projects I'm in the middle of. One of them is jazz. The other one is less jazz. But I'd like people to have a chance to hear those when they're finally done. So,
yeah, yeah. Okay, cool. Well, thank you again. Thanks so very much. And people, if you're in town in LA, Thursday night, I have a short little gig, 5 to 7 in Pasadena at a place called the George with one of our favorite guitar players here, Dory Amarillo. And let's see, next week I'm actually not on the noontime hang. I'll be picking it up again the following week. But next week in the evening, there's a body percussionist, vocal body percussionist from Brazil who's here, and I'll be sending that email out, and it is posted on Facebook. And if you're interested in that kind of thing, you should sign up because he's a genius, Ronaldo. He's he's been doing it for a long time. He's great. He's a great teacher. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be a wonderful evening. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, it's next Monday night. And that's it. That's all the information that I have for now. Thanks, Ron.
Thanks for having me on, and thanks to all your listeners. I'm very appreciative of it. Thank you.
See you again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Take